All right. Thank you so much for joining me today in this
Yeah.
podcast. I'm really excited to have you here and talk more about your work with Berri AI. I wanted to start off asking you, how are you doing today? I believe yesterday was a huge day for you.
Yeah. Honestly, really excited. Yesterday was an amazing day. We launched our product hunt. We got about 300 upvotes overall yesterday. We were trying to get 500, but slightly let down with that. As soon as we launched, I went around San Francisco. I went to cafes and I was telling people about my product hunt launch, and I was demoing my product. So that was really exciting. We've got a lot of traffic since the morning. I think over the last 2 weeks, we've just been getting every morning we wake up and our infra is on fire. So that's a nice feeling. We're trying to fix this. But overall, not getting a lot of sleep because trying to constantly fix infra and update the traffic that we're able to.
I've been testing since
Right.
yesterday, and I've also
Yeah,
tested just before this call.
I did see that.
So, you have a background in computer science and you've worked as a software engineer at Coinbase. What inspired you to co found Berri AI?
Yeah, so a couple of things. When I was at Coinbase, I was initially I was working on blockchain integrations. I worked at Coinbase Custody. And through that, a lot of that is interacting with different API docs. And Berri AI started off as Clerky AI, actually. So Clerky AI was an AI debugger that existed in your terminal. So anytime you get an error, it'll tell you how to fix that. And I was inspired by that. So my co-founder, Krish, he's my roommate. He started working on Clerky AI, and he started that. And that idea was just stuck in my head. Like I keep on running into these errors and I need to read API documentation. I just wish I could use the power of GPT-3 to fix my problems, right? So that's how we started off. And through this process of Turkey, what we would do is we would schedule demos to meet with people and show our product, right? These are enterprise users. And what we noticed is that when we were building Turkey, we would have this working Google Colab, which is like a GPT-3 ChatGPT like application, right? And it works on a Google Colab. And then we noticed that it would take almost 5 to 6 hours to move from a Colab just to a work website and a API endpoint that can actually work, right? So we're like, why does this problem need to exist? There's Banana Dev, there's all these tools that can help you go to production, right? So that's how Berri started, where we would wake up at 4 a.m. just to go from a Google Colab to a working API endpoint and a chat app for these GPT-3 like applications. And we initially started off Berri, which is this one-click deploy. So you could go from Google Colab to a production endpoint just with one click. It's a one cell deploy.
Can you tell us more about Berri AI and the unique solution it provides for the ones who haven't explored Berri AI yet?
Yeah, so Berri AI is a platform for developers to programmatically create custom ChatGPT instances. Now, custom ChatGPT instances mean that you can create ChatGPT for your own data source, right? So let's say you have a knowledge base of PDFs, Notion documents, CSV files, SQL databases. Those would be custom ChatGPT instances. So you can ask questions against those instances. And then you can also customize the prompt. So you can say, you are a customer support agent, you're an AI agent, you're meant to help someone with taxes, right? So those two metrics really allow you to customize it. Beyond that, Berri allows you to further customize where you can specify the user intent. So if you want to do data analysis, you want to do customer support, we give you the tools to create those applications. And overall, Berri's inspired by me and my co-founder. Like we love this space. We love large language models. We host hackathons every 2 weeks where we constantly work with developers and help them spin up these ChatGPT like applications. And we want to make this process really easy for anyone to spin up because we see the power of large language models and ChatGPT, and we want to help people bring that into enterprises.
Okay. So I believe it's a B2B solution, correct?
Exactly. Yes.
This was not in my list of questions, but I'm going to ask you this. I know there is a growing concern in the enterprises and organizations with the data privacy, with OpenAI, the way how they see as confidential information is not the conventional way how SaaS vendors see. Do you ever consider those things when you're building Berri AI regarding how PII information would be manifested behind the scenes?
That's a big concern for us. We want to make sure our customers, their privacy is maintained, and we don't want customer data leaking, right? And if you think about it, actually, Berri is helping solve this problem in a couple of different ways. One is we allow you to create these custom chat GPT apps. So think of a future where you have my Notion, so I have a Notion document and you have a Notion document, right? And what I really want is if I ask a question against my Notion document, to really answer that question from my own Notion document. For example, I could ask it, what are Ishaan's goals for today? it should answer the question from my Notion document, not yours, right? It should not leak that information to me. So that's step one of what Berri allows you to do, where it allows you to create these custom ChatGPT instances for all your end users. So you don't have this data leakage problem, right? That's step one of how to solve this. The other concerns are having your data go to OpenAI or like having your data stored with Berri, right? So if you're an enterprise that doesn't want to store your data with Berri, then we allow you to do on-premise hosting. So we give you a Docker image of what Berri is, and then you can host the platform on your own infrastructure, right? And then you can create these applications on your own infrastructure. And then beyond that, if you'd like to not use OpenAI, we actually allow you to select what large language model you'd like to use. So if you'd like to spin up Flan T5 on Google Cloud, you can basically specify that it should use that large language model, which is your own hosted version of these open source large language models. So Berri really allows you to create these applications for your large language models. You can think of us as this middle layer between like OpenAI or any of the large language models. And then the other layer is your data, right? And we allow this interaction to happen and bring these use cases to enterprise cases.
It's more like a plug and play to whichever large language model the customers wanted.
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So this is a tricky question. Berri AI is backed by Y Combinator, right?
Correct.
YC's acceptance rate is 2%. How did you convince them?
So we got in on the second interview. My co-founder actually did the first interview by himself, and they told him to find another co-founder and get paying users. So after that interview, we worked really hard to really like iterate on this idea, and we went through many cycles. Really, at the core, before getting to YC, we had the AI debugger tool, which is Quirky. And all we did there was we tried to get on calls with as many developers as possible. And we tried to really create something that developers wanted, right? And I did this by like reaching out to developers I worked with, and Krish reached out to all developers he worked with. And through that process, we were able to get about 33 paying users by the time we did our second interview. So we really worked very hard on iterating our product and truly building something that people are looking for. Because we started off not actually solving the problem. An interesting anecdote here is that initially, Quirky had started off with just answering one question, but then we found that people want to go back and forth, right? Like when you debug your code, if you give a suggestion, you should actually have the ability to say, no, I actually want to fix my code in this way, right? So you only discover these kind of things when you talk to users, and that's something that's core at Berri also. Like anytime we launch a feature, we talk to our users instantly, and like that's how we're doing feature development currently also.
That's really interesting, Ishaan. So you've previously founded an online education platform called Lunagy. How did your experience with Lunagy influence your approach in building Berri AI?
Yeah, I think it's very different. I learned a lot of lessons from my first experience with Lunagy. Some lessons that I learned was if you're building and you come from a technical background, you can almost like get really sucked into constantly building and building the best infrastructure, right? Like you could get started and get like 5 database tables, you could build this auto scaling infrastructure. And then I think after like 5 to 6 months of building, then you push this out into the world and you realize, oh, no one's actually going to use this, right? So I think that's a big learning that I've taken on to Berri. We literally launched within the first 3 days of the idea. Like we wanted to test this out. So right now we prioritize just getting off localhost as soon as possible.
So you're saying from the genesis of the idea to the product into the market, it took what, 3 days?
I want to say less than 3 days. Like literally the first test we did was a 1-hour test where we built a demo video and we put that out in the world and saw if that actually is solving a problem that people faced. So that was the first test we did. And we built that video in less than like 1 hour, right? We didn't actually build the entire product at that point. It was just this video that we wanted to test. Is this a problem that people have? From there, then we saw that this resonated, we iterated, then we found that, oh, data ingestion is the place where people were stuck on. So then we further iterate on our Berri is, and now you can see Berri today, where we handle the data ingestion part of this, and we help you spin up multiple instances of ChatGPT.
That's awesome. The interview with the Y Combinator, you had this idea, you interviewed this, you presented to Y Combinator. What's the timeline? Like how long did it take for you to present it and make this product available in the market?
I think once we got into YC, we were doing customer interviews and trying to like understand this AI debugging space. But then I spoke about the problem that Krish and I were facing, where we were waking up at 4 a.m. and we were like, we should probably build something to solve our own problem, right? Like we don't want to keep on waking up at 4 a.m. just to build this demo to move from Google Colab to a production endpoint. So basically after that, we decided to solve our own problem. And I spoke about how we tested out this problem, right? We wanted to test, we build this demo video and we'll see if it resonates with other people. But I guess from the time we had the problem to when we went to market, it took 1 day where we just had this demo video out into the world. And then from there, it took about another 3 to 4 days to actually build out a very bare bones MVP. So that was another 3 to 4 days. So we moved very fast with Berri. Like once we have an idea, we just want to test it out, get that out into the hands of people as soon as possible. That's very valuable because you can start talking to users once you have a product out into the world, and you can watch people interact with your product and get feedback very fast.
That's quite a journey. So Berri is focused on building LLM apps in minutes, not days.
Correct.
Can you
Correct.
tell us more about the challenges that you faced in building Berri AI and how you are working on overcoming these challenges?
Yeah, so I can talk about a couple things. So as soon as we launched Berri AI, within the first 7 days, we had about 2,000 apps built on our platform. And that was an unexpected amount of traffic. And we were like, wow, we really need to figure out how to manage this traffic, right? So we had 2,000 ChatGPT like instances built on top of Berri. And then we're like, we need to build this infrastructure to manage all these instances, right? So then we built out this logging infrastructure where we're looking at the queries, right? So we can see, oh, something went wrong here, or the OpenAI endpoint is down right now. That's why we're getting this error. So we built this alerting mechanism. So this really helps you manage this fleet of ChatGPT instances that you have. Besides that, we added the ability to fine tune. So what that means is that if the instance that you've created does not give you a good response, we added the ability to thumbs down or thumbs up and give feedback, right? And then you get into the intricacies of how do I do this for every single instance that I have, right? And we built out this infrastructure to do that. So essentially, once we launched, we had 2,000 applications built, and then we got a bunch of feedback from all our users. And then we built out this infrastructure to manage this fleet of ChatGPT-like instances. So we've gone through this process, facing a problem and then solving our own problem. And now the companies that we're going to and trying to show this are people that are trying to build these custom ChatGPT instances for all their end users. And we have the infrastructure to manage that now and allow you to really get to that unlimited scale of applications where all your users have their own custom ChatGPT instance.
That's great. Do you see any businesses signing up with Berri AI?
Yeah, we have a couple businesses. I won't say their names for their privacy, but we do have businesses working. The ideal customer is actually someone working in ML and data science. So they're the tech lead of that company, and they already are interested in getting ChatGPT into their company, or they want to get those capabilities. Those are the types of customers we work with. And Berri is a developer tool. It's for technical people, and it's an API endpoint that you can create these custom ChatGPT instances with.
Sure. What are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing in the technology sector today, and how is Berri AI positioned itself to take advantage of these trends?
Yeah, I mean, in the technology sector, I think AI is everything everyone is always talking about now. Krish and I both think that like large language models and GPT-3, GPT-4 are extremely powerful, right? And we think that the time is right now, and we want to enable people to build using these platforms, right? And we think it's key to do this right now. And we think this is a major wave, and we definitely want to be a part of it and really enable people to build this. Another thing we think of a lot is this risk of there's so much hype in the space, right? And what might happen is that we might see a lot of applications that stand the risk of not being actually useful, right? So with all this hype, like you can just very simply call an OpenAI endpoint, do some prompt fine tuning, figure out what the best prompt is, and then try to get your answers.
Yeah. What are some of the key metrics that Berri AI uses to measure success, and how do you ensure that you're delivering value to your customer?
We're trying to make sure that something we're building at Berri is genuinely useful to people. Two things, right? One is the number of queries that users are getting, and we want to make sure that we're giving people the ability to spin up these multiple instances of ChatGPT, right? So we want to measure that if one user, so this is like one user from one company, they're actually spinning up custom instances per user. So we want to measure how many of those are doing. And then for each of those instances, we want to measure how many queries they're getting. And we want to make sure that it's not just one query, because then it's not actually useful to the end user.
Let's talk about a broader spectrum of artificial intelligence. So how do you see artificial intelligence evolving in the next few years, and what are the implications do you think it will have for businesses and society as a whole?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm still discovering that myself. I actually don't have a good answer to that question. I think what's exciting when you're just working on your own startup in the space is that it's like I talk to people all the time that are interested in using Berri, right? And a very common question I get is, so how is this useful to me? Explain this like I'm a grandma, right? And I think something that we think of at Berri is this problem of like querying and searching for your data has always existed, right? Like the previous way we solved this was through search, or you can manually look at your data. But I think that this problem of data querying can now be improved when you have these ChatGPT instances and your large language models, right? And what that allows you to do is more effectively look at your data, search through your data, and query that data, right? It could be structured or unstructured. GPT and large language models are really enabling efficient data retrieval and finding those answers. Besides that, you can also use it for content generation. So let's say that I have a book that I've written, right? And I want to generate content in the style of my writing or the style of my book. Then I can use that book to write content I can use that book to write tweets and LinkedIn posts in that style.
Does Berri AI has any competition today in the market?
Yeah, I think at least for competition, until we're making $1 million in revenue ARR annually, we're not big enough to compete with anyone, right? Until we get to that point, I don't think we're even looking at competition. We're just heads down on getting to that point.
Even from a capability perspective, you don't see anyone in the market that's competing with Berri AI?
I think we're not even considering competition because if you think about the AI space, there's so much hype. And if we were to go on Twitter and LinkedIn, there would be a new competitor coming out every 3 days, right? That's essentially what's happening. And I think at least at Berri, something that's top priority for us is just making sure that we're building something that's useful for people. And a good metric for that is just the revenue that we're making, right? Because people would pay for something that's actually useful. And I think like until we get to that scale of getting that revenue, we're not even looking at competition because we're too small to even consider competition.
Some words of wisdom here. So what advice would you give to young entrepreneurs who are interested in starting their own company in the tech industry?
I think a couple of things. Just do it. That's the first thing. Like I used to be at Coinbase and Krish asked me to come on board for Berri. I have a lot of respect for Krish in this regard. Like he was in Microsoft before and he had a fever dream when he had COVID and he was like, screw it, I'm just gonna do it, you know? And both of us are fairly young. We graduated from college about a year ago. And yeah, we just went after it. You know, this was something that we've always wanted to do. So we just started building in the space and started testing out ideas. Besides that, get off local hooks. Like that's key. Or like if you build something, just make sure you're putting it in the hands of people. So step one is like build something, and then the second step is get people to show up to the thing you built, right? So you need to figure out those really two things, and you're good. It's essentially just that, right? Build something and get people to show up to what you build, and then talk to them. Obviously, get feedback.
Yeah. So what are some of the important lessons that you have learned from your own experience as an entrepreneur?
I'm going to talk about, again, this idea of moving fast and getting your product into the hands of people, right? I came from a very technical background where I was building these complicated distributed systems. I worked at Coinbase where, again, like I needed to ensure that the quality of these systems is high enough such that like it's not going down, right? So it's very easy to get stuck into this idea of getting to perfection with your product, right? And then telling people, oh, come to my product. And I think a metric that I measure now is that when I build something, I should feel slightly embarrassed about what I build and putting it out into the world. Then I know, okay, I'm moving fast enough. So that's the new metric that I use where I'm slightly embarrassed. And this is kind of the MVP of something new. And that's a good test. I can see people using it, get feedback on it. And a lot of the times what happens is I think people want something or they want X feature, but they come back to me once I put it out and they want something totally different, right?
Okay. My next question is related to the first generation immigrants who are into the industry, who are building, companies. How did you overcome things related to the immigration as such, like, H-1B and student visa, all that stuff?
That was challenging for Krish and I. We're both on the OPT STEM visa. But yeah, basically we had to work. Y Combinator was useful. They did provide us advice, but really Krish and I had to figure this out for ourselves.
So what's next for Berri AI?
I think, again, like talking to users is priority for us. Like we're trying to talk to as many heads of machine learning, data science, and companies, and we're trying to understand their problems. And we're trying to really solve for that. We want to show them the value proposition of what Berri is, and it allows you to spin up these custom ChatGPT-like instances. So we're currently in talks again with these types of people, and we want to reach out to as many of those types of people and really show them how this can be applicable for their business and their use case.
Perfect. I'll be mindful of your time, Ishaan. Thank you so much again for taking time to speak with me today. It was truly a pleasure learning more about your background and work that you've been doing with Berri AI. Before we go, is there anything else you would like to add or any final thoughts you would like to share?
Yeah, no final thoughts. That was it. I really enjoyed this. Thank you.